Chelsea Mitchell is a name that you may or may not know. She would be a household name if we lived in a country and a culture where strong and brave women were actually celebrated. We're told, of course, that such women are celebrated. We're instructed to celebrate them. But it turns out that there's only a very specific type of female bravery that we're supposed to recognize and honor. In fact, according to our cultural overlords, the most honorable act of female bravery is that which is committed by males. Trans women, quote unquote, are the most acclaimed sort of women in the country today, and they aren't really women at all. Real women take a backseat, and real women who oppose the intrusion of so-called trans women, quote unquote, aren't simply sent to the back, they're kicked off of the bus entirely. That's been the case for Chelsea Mitchell, who along with 3 other female athletes is suing the Connecticut Interscholastic Athletic Conference for allowing males to compete against them. You may have heard of this case. Almost everyone in the country today would claim to stand for the rights of women, right? Everybody would say that. But few have had the courage to remain standing when push really comes to shove. Mitchell and her fellow plaintiffs are among the few who are actually standing up for women. And they have all of our cultural institutions, especially the media, stacked against them. That point was made abundantly clear this week after Mitchell wrote an op-ed for USA Today where she's making her case against males competing against females in sports. Now, the fact that USA Today would even publish that article in the first place may seem like an encouraging sign, but that encouraging sign quickly turned creepy and Orwellian. Before we get there, let's read some of what Mitchell wrote in her editorial, or I should say, this was her original editorial as it first appeared. This is what she says. Quote, "It's February 2020. I'm crouched at the starting line of the high school girls 55-meter indoor race. This should be one of the best days of my life. I'm running in the state championship, and I'm ranked the fastest high school female in the 55-meter dash in the state. I should be feeling confident. I should know that I have a strong shot at winning. Instead, all I can think about is how all my training, everything I've done to maximize my performance, might not be enough simply because there's a runner on the line with an enormous physical advantage, a male body. I won that race, and I'm grateful. But time after time, I have lost. I've lost 4 women's state championship titles, 2 all-New England awards, and numerous other spots on the podium to male runners. I was bumped to 3rd place in the 55-meter dash in 2019 behind 2 male runners. With every loss, it gets harder and harder to try again. That's a devastating experience. It tells me that I'm not good enough, that my body isn't good enough. No matter how hard I work, I'm unlikely to succeed because I'm a woman. That experience is why 3 of my fellow female athletes and I filed a lawsuit last year with Alliance Defending Freedom against the Connecticut Interscholastic Athletic Conference because girls and women shouldn't be stripped of their right to fair competition." Okay, now, everything that she's written here so far is factually correct, morally correct, inarguable, I would say. She's a woman. She was forced to compete against people who are not women. They had unfair advantages because of their male bodies. Through those unfair advantages, she was robbed of the achievements that she had earned. This is an utterly unassailable and undeniable point. She also describes, and I want to read this because she talks about how bad the situation has gotten. And it's actually worse than I even realized. She says, quote, "The CIAC allows biological males to compete in girls and women's sports. As a result, 2 males began racing in girls track in 2017. In the 2017, 2018, and 2019 seasons alone, these males took 15 women's state track championship titles held in 2016 by 9 different girls, and more than 85 opportunities to participate in higher level competitions that belong to female track athletes. That's because males have massive physical advantages. Their bodies are simply bigger and stronger on average than female bodies. It's obvious to every single girl on the track." All right, 15 titles. 2 males took 15 titles that before had been split between 9 different girls. And these are males who, we should remember, wouldn't have even made it onto the track in a championship meet against other males. These were mediocre, unimpressive male athletes who couldn't hack it against the boys, and yet they dominated against the girls. And by the way, we can't see inside their minds. We don't know their motivation. But I'm going to speculate that this is not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence that they found that they were mediocre and they couldn't really compete against the boys, and then they discover their female identity. Well, what do you know? What a fortunate coincidence. Can't compete against the guys. Turns out I'm a girl. Well, here we go. I don't know, but I'm going to say probably not a coincidence. And why do they have that advantage? Well, because the male body confers enormous advantages in athletic competitions against females with female bodies, which are the only kinds of females that exist. Chelsea Mitchell's point is that no matter how these boys identify, no matter how they feel, no matter their perception of themselves, the biological facts remain. And all that matters in a track meet are the facts, especially the biological facts, the physical facts. That's one of the great things about running as a sport. I ran track when I was in high school. And one of the things I like about it is that it's mano a mano, very, very simple. Can I get to the finish line before you? That's all it comes down to. All that matters are the physical facts. Am I stronger than you? Am I faster? Do I have more endurance? And we're going to find out because whoever crosses the finish line first, that's the answer. What doesn't really matter are your feelings. So if you have a biological advantage over somebody else on the track, that advantage is not offset by your feelings or your self-perception. And that's the case that Mitchell makes, or made anyway, in USA Today. That was until trans activists read her piece and, realizing that they could make no intellectual argument against it, resorted to their favorite tactic, which is silencing the opposition. And they especially enjoy silencing women. I mean, nobody, no group in America more aggressively silences women than trans activists. It's not even close. But if they want to silence women, they can't do that without the acquiescence of cowards in positions of power. So they complained that the article hurt their feelings. And USA Today, with little resistance on their part or pushback, summarily changed the article after publication and without notifying the author that they were doing it. They just changed it in order to remove all, quote, hurtful language from it. Now, as you recall, let's go back again. Read this one little paragraph again. In the original article, as written by Chelsea Mitchell, which was originally published in USA Today, this is what it said. Again, quote, "Instead, all I can think about is how all my training, everything I've done to maximize my performance, might not be enough simply because there's a runner on the line with an enormous physical advantage, a male body." Remember that? Okay. After USA Today made post-publication editorial changes to appease radical trans activists, it now says, "Instead, all I can think about is how all my training, everything I've done to maximize my performance, might not be enough simply because there's a transgender runner on the line with an enormous physical advantage." You spot the difference? Kind of hard to miss. They remove the word male. Whereas before, she says that the runner had the advantage of a male body. Now it simply says that the transgender runner had an advantage. What kind of advantage? Well, who knows? Maybe he was wearing more comfortable socks that day. Maybe she ate a cheeseburger before the race and he didn't. All mention of the specific type of advantage has been erased. Indeed, USA Today removed the word male from the entire article and didn't even acknowledge that they'd done it, aside from an editor's note apologizing for their hurtful language. And in this case, the hurtful language, again, was scientifically correct language. And it was also the entire point of the article. Mitchell's original piece says the word male 10 times. Every other sentence practically contains the word male because that's the entire point and premise. There is no argument against trans runners in female sports except for the fact that they're male. That's it. There's no other argument. That's the only one, and it's all you need. In fact, the argument has nothing to do with the fact that they're trans. That's irrelevant. Their trans is self-perception. Their self-perception is irrelevant. The whole point, the only point, the point is that they are male. USA Today decided that it's happy to publish her argument as long as her argument doesn't contain her actual argument. This is quite clearly, to my mind, one of the most egregious and outlandish cases of media bias and Orwellian speech manipulation that we've yet seen. And it really matters. This is more than just some dumb thing that we can roll our eyes about and say, oh, there's the silly mainstream media up to its old tricks again. No, this is the kind of thing that influences people. The goal is pretty clear. It's to make it seem as though the people who are opposed to males and female sports or female locker rooms are really just opposed to trans people. And we hear this kind of, this is the way the media presents it all the time. The only difference is that usually they don't make a change post-publication. In most cases, the original thing they publish is going to be framed exactly like the edited version of Chelsea Mitchell's piece, where they say things like, and you see all kinds of headlines like this, that, conservatives are opposed to trans people in sports, or there's a bill being passed in Texas or wherever that will ban trans people from sports. That's not the case. That's not the case at all. It's not about trans. The average oblivious American who reads that, okay, they're going to read that and think, well, what's the problem here? Who cares if the other runner is trans? When in reality, it's Chelsea Mitchell who doesn't care if they're trans. They can identify as however they want. It's the biological reality that matters. And the goal of the left, with a big assist from the media, is to erase that biological reality. Now, in truth, they can never actually erase a reality. Biology will remain biology, no matter what anyone says about it or feels in relation to it. But they can create a society that fundamentally fails to recognize or is hostile to reality. And unfortunately, towards that end, they are succeeding. Listen, hit that subscribe button right now. Do it right now. I thank you for your compliance. It is somewhat appreciated.